as well, right? Old picture was the environments and the economy. Now we're trying to shift the picture to show that the economy is inside the environment. And actually I want to sit on this because I'm really glad that you guys had natural capital on one of those posters, because I think it's interesting that you're seeing natural capital as this socially progressive, environmentalist, ecological economics thing, because the term natural capital is not invented by the ecological economists. Natural capital's been around since, forever in economics terms. It's just had a really limited scope, right? It's more land, more oil, more resources, more timber, right? And we're trying to expand natural capital to encompass these other goods and services that aren't necessarily traded on markets, right? So, getting into the way the taxonomies are built, pretty much every taxonomy since the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment follows the same structure of having 4 big subcategories of provisioning, regulating, information, and supporting services. Provisioning services produce food, water, oxygen, all of the basic building blocks, kind of for market economics as well. In there we've got water storage, right, provided by lakes, provided by permanent ice and snowpack, provided by groundwater aquifers, the Ogallala Aquifer, right? Energy and raw materials, right? An example of energy and raw materials that I haven't mentioned yet. Anybody?
Ore.
Yes.
Metals.
Exactly. Metals. Food, right? This isn't just crops and livestock, but also game, forage, fisheries, right? So it can be for subsistence uses or commercial uses. Medicinal resources. Everybody know what Taxol is? What's Taxol?
Usually drug use is called tequila.
For breast cancer in particular. It's derived from yew trees, right? So ecosystems can also provide these medicinal resources, and it's really hard to quantify the value of, an extra couple of years or surviving breast cancer, right? But we know that it's incredibly valuable. A lot of people would pay anything to have one of their loved ones or to have themselves be able to survive something like that. Ornamental resources, right? Palm fibers for weaving rugs, weaving clothing, jewelry, anything like that. And that's all the provisioning services. Next ones are regulating services, and these are more process-oriented, right? They create and maintain the healthy environmental conditions that help support those provisioning services. Climate stability, flood and storm protection, soil formation and quality, water quality, all of that. So air quality and climate stability are 2 different services, right? Air quality encompasses removal of air pollutants, smog, smoke, certain chemicals as well that can become airborne. Anybody hear about the sriracha plant?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So anything that could mitigate that would be mitigating air pollution, right? Climate stability is more carbon storage, carbon sequestration, methane storage, methane sequestration, and any greenhouse gases. Also temperature regulation. The oceans provide significant climate stability services for the globe in terms of blue carbon and temperature regulation. Disaster risk reduction. This encompasses storms, wildfires, drought, landslides, mudslides, earthquakes, tsunamis, pretty much anything that could be catastrophic to the human environment. Ecosystem services are by and large anthropocentric because we are the ones doing the valuing. It's not the best system philosophically, but it's the best for communicating with other humans. Biological control controls pests and weeds, largely invasive species in terms of animals and seeds. So like lizards that eat insects and things like that. Pollination and seed dispersal. Any natural pollinators known in Washington State? Yeah. native pollinators.
Butterflies?
Butterflies, yep. Want to plant milkweed for the monarch butterflies and things like that, right? Mosquitoes. Is that what I heard? Seed dispersal, also an important service. Water capture, conveyance, and supply. We just changed this to be water capture, conveyance, and supply instead of water regulation or water supply, because those terms, which are used by a lot of other taxonomies, were a little bit too ambiguous for us, right? Water capture, conveyance, and supply is meant to communicate that water supply is a function of both timing and quantity of water, right? Water is not a static service. It's extremely difficult to value because it flows, it moves, it's not two-dimensional, it's three-dimensional, and it has this whole cycle where it, goes up, becomes clouds, and then rains down, right? So it's a vapor, it's a liquid, it becomes snow and ice. It's really hard to value that in a two-dimensional landscape. Water quality also, removal of pollutants. People are using algae to remove nitrogen and phosphorus from runoff from farm fields in the Midwest to try to reduce the nitrogen and phosphorus loadings in the Mississippi River. So those sorts of services can be provided as well. Soil retention, erosion control. This is important for natural disasters and also for farmland. Soil formation, soil quality, navigation. This is a new one as well. Very few other taxonomies include it, but it's really, really important to people. Every time we go talk to people in Louisiana, every time we talk to anybody really along the Mississippi River corridor, they say, where does navigation fall in ecosystem services? Where does having enough water in the river in order to bring ships up fall in ecosystem services? So we created a category for it.
Subcategory are we in?
Regulating.
Regulating.
Yes.
So, can you explain a little bit how that fits into regulating?
It fits into regulating because right now we're largely talking about water, which is such a dynamic service. And it also, the studies aren't there yet, but we'd like to see studies on oceanic currents, right, for navigation, for international navigation. I think it would be possible to do studies on air currents and jet streams as well for air travel. And it could be possible to include land travel here as well, but the studies just don't exist yet. We're setting up the framework before the research is done. Next are information services, right? These are also sort of more broadly cultural and very subjective value-based services, spiritual services, historic services, artistic services. And the broad categories here are aesthetic information, which is often valued in view sheds, right? How property value or how quality of life is influenced by having access to views of nature, right? Homes that are on Puget Sound are more expensive than homes that don't have a view of Puget Sound. That is an objective fact, right? You're going to pay significantly more for waterfront property, and that's because of the aesthetic value of that ocean view. Recreation and tourism brings in a lot of money, and it's also brings a lot of quality of life to people, right? So we talk about it that way. Cultural value is a really hard one to put a dollar value on, but people are making great strides towards this and towards categorizing cultural services. Zach, one of our colleagues, is going to come in and talk about this more later, and he is the expert in this area, so I won't presume to tread on his toes too much there, but cultural value is also really important. Science and education, right, being able to go out and experience nature, really important. And then supporting services. And we had a lot of debate on supporting services and what actually qualified as a supporting service is a separate category of supporting service. At any time there have been between 1 and 3 supporting services, and we just kind of decided that everything falls under habitat. So we only have 1 supporting service anymore. And under habitat we've got biodiversity, genetic diversity, nursery, refugia, and generic habitat values, right? It was becoming too difficult to try to separate out genetic diversity and genetic resources and biodiversity from habitat because they just seemed like like they connected together that way. So I don't want to stand up here and talk this whole time. So we're going to break into groups.